Could somebody check the children, please? Just real quick before we get into this review. Just maybe check the children, okay? Just once, maybe twice. Go ahead. Yeah, check the children. When a Stranger Calls, the remake, stars Camilla Bell, Katie Cassidy, Tommy Flanagan, and is directed by Simon West. What's up, guys? First off, real quick before I get into this, this is an interview with the Vampire VHS, and just found out this morning that Anne Rice, the author, passed away. And her books, her Vampire Chronicles books, have inspired so many people throughout the years, and she has so many fans. So just wanted to give a real quick condolences to her family. And you know, the horror family loves Anne Rice to death. So yeah, and this is a fantastic movie. So yeah, Interview with a Vampire. And you know what? I'll probably do a review for this movie real soon in her honor. So yeah, Anne Rice, rest in peace. And I know that's vampires have nothing to do with this movie, but I just wanted to say something real quick about Anne Rice because, you know, her books have been in my house for, you know, over 20 years now. So it's sad. It's sad that she's gone. But anyway, back to the task at hand. I just reviewed When a Stranger Calls, the original. Really haven't watched any of these movies in so long. Never seen When a Stranger Calls Back, but I will say in the comments section, so many of you guys were saying you gotta check out the sequel. The beginning, the intro is even more chilling than the intro from the '79 movie. So I just ordered the Blu-ray from Amazon. I'm definitely gonna give that a fresh watch. I guess only watch when I finally get it, and a review will be coming for When a Stranger Calls Back. But I've been in the mood, so I decided, you know what? Let's go ahead and do the remake. So I just watched the remake. I mean, literally right before this, I just watched the remake. And I'm glad I did. I haven't seen this movie in probably a decade. And a lot of memories with this movie, actually, because my daughter, who's a horror fan herself, she's probably not as intense as I am with horror. I guess who is, or in my circle anyway. But this was kind of her introduction to horror. I remember when she was a teenager, and it was shortly after this, wouldn't it? This came out in 2006. So yeah, she was probably middle school age or something like that. And this was one of the first horror movies that she watched, and she loved this movie. I think she still loves this movie. And it holds a special place in her heart and in mine because, you know, we watched that movie together a few times back in the day. And I think, if anything, this movie is a great gateway to horror for anybody. And there's nothing wrong with making what you call light horror, you know? And I've given PG-13 horror the business for quite a few years on my channel because I think there is a lot of PG-13 horror out there that just feels way too light for me. But you don't need blood and guts to create tension. And if that's your goal and you do it effectively, then I'll give it a pass. Because honestly, this movie, not only is it PG-13, but it could probably be PG, just PG. Because it's not, you know, a blood and guts fest or anything like that. This really honors what the original, at least that opening 20 minutes, did so well. Is that movie leaned heavily on tension, probably more than any other horror movie in history. And so let's take that first 20 minutes and let's make an entire movie out of that. And I'm not surprised. You know, looking at the remake craze, and you know, in a remake, you definitely want to bring forth some differences than the original, because otherwise, what's the point? Looking at you, Psycho. And I think they did the perfect job for what this movie should be. They looked at that first 20 minutes and said, hey, we could probably stretch that out, you know? Maybe front load the movie with getting to know who Jill is, which also I like that the characters in this movie, a lot of the same names are used in the original. Specifically Jill Johnson. Also, the parents' names are Mandrake, just like in the original. So I think that's what's important with remakes. You gotta keep, you know, a hold on some of the core aspects of the originals, and make your changes along the way, just as long as it doesn't get in the way of the foundation of what the movie's about. And I like when you have character names that carry over to the remakes. I don't know, it's just a pet peeve of mine. But anyway, a quick plot synopsis, just in case you've never even seen the original, and you might have seen just the remake like me. I saw the remake before I even saw the original, but you got this character, Jill Johnson, and she goes and babysits for the Mandrakis for the duration of the movie. And then she starts getting these phone calls throughout the movie, and it's this killer, and he likes to toy with her. This is clearly a cat and mouse type killer. This is not a killer that goes for the jugular immediately. He likes to play, and that's what he does throughout this movie.
Mandrakis residence.
Is everything okay?
This is definitely a right down the middle pros and cons type of movie though. So I guess let's jump into the pros. I do like that they chose the best part of the original and decided to make an entire movie out of it. I love the pacing. I would even say the pacing in this movie is probably better overall than the original movie. Not the intro to the original movie, but the entire movie as a whole. It does feel disjointed because they spend the first 20 minutes with the character Jill and the killer, and the killer's in the house. But then they go 7 years, and then you got to do this exploration of the actual killer, and then bookend it with Jill again. I think to try to do that in a remake, you could easily get yourself into trouble. And so I think they played it safe, and that's a word you're probably going to hear throughout this review. This movie is very safe in a lot of moments. But that's what they did. Let's focus on that, because it's no hard task to just make this a straight up home invasion movie. But they definitely string you along for the duration, and the intensity does get a little bit higher and higher and higher as it goes. And I think the final act in the aviary area, the garden area, is perfection, is wonderful. Just because of the cinematography. Like, I would even say like the house and the cinematography are the stars of this movie. That house, probably one of the most iconic houses that I've ever seen in horror, just because the design is so unique. I like how when she walks from room to room, the lights go on and off automatically. The cinematography throughout the house is just on point. It's glorious. And I think when you're planning out a location, you want to have a lot of space for the shadows and darkness. You want to play with your colors, really. That's what horror is all about, is playing with those dark, shadowy colors and finding spots for them. Because this is one of those movies where you're going to be looking all over the frame as Jill is walking through that house. From A to B to C, the killer could be anywhere in the house. Also, I do think that this made some better decisions at certain points. Like, one of my big complaints about the original was the killer calling, "Have you checked the children?" And she never once goes to check the children. The first time he literally says that in this movie, she goes straight up and she checks the children. And of course the children are fine, which I don't like that. But still, I think realistically, that's what you would do if you were in that situation. You would go and you would check the children. I think the score is pretty standard. It definitely is effective in some points. But it is, your millennium stock type of horror score that we hear. I guess, not to throw out names, but like Tyler Bates. Tyler Bates has done some great stuff, but there's like a recipe for modern horror in terms of scores. A lot of it does kind of bleed into each other, and it seems like when I'm thinking about what's some of the best scores from the 2000s, definitely When a Stranger Calls Remake's not gonna, I've already forgotten what the score sounds like. I just know that they did plug in some ominous beats here and there, and you know what? What more could you ask for, right? It works. It's effective. And I think Camilla Bell, she does what is needed for the part. I don't think she goes crazy in the movie, but I think I would rather have a more, subdued performance than somebody that is just constantly screaming, because it can affect the pacing of the movie. If you're looking for a tension-filled movie, you don't want your main character screaming in minute 23, It has to be a gradual build all the way through. And I was thinking about that as I was watching this. I could see myself wanting a kill or something scary to happen within the first 30 minutes of the movie. But again, this is not that type of movie. So if something like that did happen, then it could throw off the balance of the tension, if that's something you're looking for in this type of film, which clearly that's what Simon West was going for with this. He wanted just that escalation throughout, you know, that perfect escalation. And this does have like perfect escalation. It's a slow burn for sure. And there were moments in the movie where I started giving up a little bit, but then they would grab me with something. Could be small, could be big, but they'd always grab me. And, you know, as I'm starting to fall back out of my chair, I pull back up and I'm still in it. I'm still in it. And then once her friend Tiffany is found dead, that's when it really starts ratcheting up, you know, and you got that great showdown in the aviary with the fog and everything coming up, the mist, the great cinematography. And also the killer, Tommy Flanagan, you know, we all know him from like Braveheart and other movies that he's done. Those scars are real. From the second I saw him, I was like, I guarantee you they're going to put him as a serial killer one day just because of those scars. And I think they did a great job using him in this movie, because I think the go-to would be, let's show his face like immediately, but they don't do that. You don't really see his full face until the end of the movie. You know, they play with the shadows with him. Even though he has these great scars, I think they lit him perfectly to make him more of like just a force than an actual person. Kind of like, I guess, the Myers approach. It works for this character. They go even as far as not giving him a name. You know, he has no identity, which makes him even creepier. Whereas in the original, he did have a name. Now, let's talk about the cons of this movie, and I'm definitely going to compare this to the original. I think, let's start with like the phone calls. I didn't feel anything from most of the phone calls in this movie. And when he finally says, "Have you checked the children?" it's almost already too late. And he doesn't say it as well as Tony Beckley did. Tony Beckley, he definitely had that voice, that creepiness about him. And I think the go-to knee-jerk reaction is to go with the deep voice, you know, the deep gravelly type of voice. And yeah, that's an approach, but Tony Beckley didn't do that. He had more of a higher register, but for some reason it was still really creepy. And you know, the moment when he says, "Your blood all over me," that's the way Tony Beckley said it, and I did a piss poor interpretation of it. But in this movie, it's just like, "Your blood all over me." It might as well have been like that. So just very ineffective. A lot of times he's just breathing, and again, that can be effective. But for this movie, I didn't think it worked that well. And there were some moments where the phone call's like, you know, because she's trying to keep him on the line for over 60 seconds, and all you hear is breathing for 60 seconds. Just breathing, and it's not really scary. So I think they failed miserably in the phone call department for most of this movie. Also, Katie Cassidy, I mean, one of my favorite heroines in horror. She's pretty much wasted in this. And this is, you know, one of her earlier movies. She has a small part, but she's like the friend Tiffany that shows up. The scene with her is actually pretty effective when she's trying to get into the car and they're stretching out the tension. But I wanted more from this character, and I know that that's not what the plan was with the movie, but I would have liked to have seen more of her. Maybe even let her live and surprise and come back at the end and maybe help out Jill. That would have been cool. And also on the flip side of how much I really liked Camilla Bell as Jill, I don't think she was nearly as effective as Carol Kane in the original. You know, she's just there. If I'm doing like a top 10 final girls of like the 2000s, she's probably not going to make the list. I don't think she's horrible. I think she's okay, you know? She's okay. Also, one more problem I had was the reveal that the killer is in the house.
Listen to me. We traced the call. It's coming from inside the house. You hear me? It's coming from inside the house. You need to get out of there right now.
I think it's kind of weak because I think most people, especially horror fans, are already going to know about that twist. Or maybe just the way this movie goes, you feel like the killer's in the house anyway. So I don't think it's a big surprise when it actually happens. And that's something where you guys can get involved and let me know in the comments if you saw this movie first. You might have already even knew about it. Like the original, that twist is so iconic that people that haven't even seen the movie know about the twist. That's how big it is. So it would be like remaking Empire Strikes Back and finding out that Vader is Luke's father. But overall, guys, I did enjoy this remake. I think it is definitely one of the more effective remakes out there. Definitely not the best, but I think it aims to do exactly what it does. You know, I think it succeeds in that regard. I don't think it swings for the fences, but in terms of tension, there's some nice tension-filled moments in this movie, you know, and I think that's what it was going for. So I enjoyed it. Every time I've watched this movie, I've enjoyed it. I don't like it more, I don't like it less. I just say, that was a good time after I'm done with it. And there's nothing wrong with that. So pretty much this movie is a straight up humdrum, you know, down the line. But that's not a bad thing, you know. Sometimes we want those lighter horror movies that are just straight up tension, that have, let's face it, pretty people. Sometimes we want those, you know, and they work. So this is definitely not a bad remake at all. So anyway, guys, let me know in the comments your thoughts on the When a Stranger Calls remake. Looking forward to hearing them. Follow me at Drumdums on my socials. Support me on Patreon. Buy me a coffee. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching. Have a great day. And Drumdum out.